Voting Theory Class 2 Video 3. In this video we're going to talk about social welfare functions and ordinal voting systems. Okay, these are two definitions which are going to be very important. So let's begin with the definition of a social welfare function. A social welfare function is a function that takes a voter profile and assembles a societal ranking of the alternatives. So the idea is it's some sort of function, some sort of algorithm or set of rules where you give it a voter profile, so a complete list of how everyone voted, and then it tells you the outcome of the election. Like, it's a method for determining who wins the election, who comes second and third and so on, based on the information of how people voted. Okay, so very, very important. Social welfare function is like the fancy name. I prefer to just call it a voting system. So in this, for this module, I'll try and use the term voting system as opposed to social welfare function because it's just a bit too fancy. I prefer to just say voting system. Okay, so a voting system, a social welfare function, it's just a function, a set of rules which determines the outcome of an election based on how everyone voted. And these are the whole, this is the basis of voting theory. Voting theory is all about studying voting systems. Okay, so sort of like the main goal of voting theory is to find the best voting system, the best social welfare function. But exactly what I mean by best is not clear. Okay, like the most fair, the most representative, the easiest to understand. There's so many different interpretations of the word best, which we're going to examine in later videos. Okay, but voting theory can pretty much be summed up into trying to find the best voting system. One thing which is important, and I want to note, is in the previous video we mentioned that a rational voter, they have a strict total order for their voter preferences. But the output of a social welfare function, the output of a voting system, doesn't need to be strict. Okay? So unlike voter preferences, a societal ranking, so the output of the voting system, is not necessarily strict. So, for example, some alternatives might be ranked equally. Okay, so the voting system, it might tell you that there's a draw and there are two people that came in first. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make. Even though we insist that each of our voters has a strict ranking, each of our voters is not allowed to like two alternatives equally. The output of the actual voting system could tell you two things are ranked equally. Okay, so let's move on to another definition. This definition is an ordinal voting system. So an ordinal voting system is any voting system that requires requires voters to rank the alternatives. Okay, so this is like what we've been talking about for the past few videos. I want all my voters to tell me, like, they think A is better than B is better than C. I want them to tell me exactly how they feel in a strict preference order. And this is an ordinal voting system. And it's because ordinal sort of means order. And I want them to give me the order of their preference. Ordinal voting systems are also sometimes called ranked voting or preferential voting. Okay, they have a bunch of different names. I'll try and just use ordinal, but it's useful to know the other names as well. some things to note about ordinal voting systems. Okay, in an ordinal voting system, you can't convey how much you prefer one alternative to another alternative. So in ordinal voting systems, voters cannot convey how much they prefer like one alternative to another. Right? They can convey that they prefer one alternative to another, but they can't convey by how much. It might be like they have a choice between two different alternatives and they really love one alternative and they really, really hate the other alternative. Well, you can't convey the magnitude by how much you prefer one to the other. You can only sort of say, I prefer this one to that one. Okay? So one stupid example to highlight this fact would be if you're given a choice between maybe H means someone pulling out one of the hairs on your head, and A means someone pulling off both your arms, then I would say I would prefer H to A. But I'd also like to really emphasize I really would prefer H to A. Like in the choice between losing one hair and losing both my arms, I'd really like a way of emphasizing that this is my favorite. Okay? But in an ordinal voting system, you can't really emphasize by how much you prefer something. You can only say, I think H is better than A. You can't say by how great a magnitude you think H is better than A. So there are other types of voting system where you can convey magnitude. Okay, the other major type of voting system is called cardinal voting systems. Okay, and in cardinal voting systems, alternatives are ranked independently. Ranked or rated independently. So what I mean by this is if you have a choice between A, B and C, and maybe you rate them out of 10. So you could say A is a 9, B is a 2, and C is also a 9. That's perfectly fine, where 10 is the best, right? You're allowed to do this. So they don't need to be different rankings, and you can more clearly convey the magnitude of your preference. Okay, so it would be hard to convey this particular preference in an ordinal voting system because this voter would say that they like A and C equally. Okay, these are cardinal voting systems, but for this course we're going to be mainly focusing on ordinal voting systems. I just wanted to let you know that there are other options out there, but for what we're concerned with, it's going to be mainly ordinal voting systems. Okay, that's the end of this video.